In a fantasy world where magic runs in the blood, one's lineage can be a blessing or a curse.
And if you thought that your family vacations were hell, try playing a Tiefling in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition.
Greetings, my name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin.
And we are the Dungeon Dudes. Welcome to our channel where we discuss everything Dungeons & Dragons, including advice for players and guides for Dungeon Masters.
We upload new videos every Thursday, so please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
Today, we are taking an in-depth look at playing a Tiefling as your character in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition.
We're going to take a look at the different racial features and traits and abilities that you get, as well as what classes might best suit a Tiefling player.
We're also going to look at some role-playing ideas and world-building ideas for both Dungeon Masters and players. There's lots to dive into with this very cool player character option, so let's get rolling.
So to get started with Tieflings, let's talk about their lineage and their lore. Tieflings are born half demon or devil, depending on where you're coming from with that.
Yes, this infernal or fiendish bloodline has marked the Tiefling's family going back generations. So while an individual Tiefling is not necessarily the direct offspring of a fiend, they are often someone who, far back in their ancestry, they have a fiendish ancestor, which could even be an archdevil or a demon lord, depending on the prestige and pedigree of your particular Tiefling. Now, in some settings, this is modified in different ways, where Tieflings come from great and noble houses. In fact, legendary empires like Baal Turath, which wholesale had all their nobility interbreed with legions of fiends, producing a new people and new culture, which endured until that empire, like all empires, fell into ruin.
There's a lot of choices that you have to make when you're setting out to play a Tiefling in Dungeons & Dragons. What does the lore and lineage of your player character look and feel like? Are they tied and bound to their demonic heritage? Are they an outcast to society? Or do they live in a world where Tieflings are abundant and part of the culture? Are they looked upon strangely when they walk into town, or are they just met just like any other creature in the worlds of D&D?
The infernal heritage of the Tieflings mean that they are subject to a wide range of different mutations and visual appearances depending on the exact nature of their ancestry. While the classic infernal Tiefling might have a tail, cloven hooved feet, and horns and various ridges and bone structures in their face, they could just as easily not, and more classical planescape Tieflings might look very, very human aside from some small unsettling feature like a slightly warped or asymmetrical face, small protruding horns, a sixth finger marking the spawn of the demon lord Gratz, or even a strange eye color or smell that emanates from your body. So in addition from the Tiefling's unique role-playing lineage, you get to really have this creativity in what your character looks like. And I'm a fan when you're creating a Tiefling of flipping through the monster manual and looking at all the art for all the various demons, devils, and particularly the archdemons and demon lords, and saying, what are the touchstones of that demon or devil that you want to embody in your Tiefling?
So Monty, what excites you most about playing a Tiefling? What do you think there is to really wrap your head around and really get excited for?
Let's not mince words. Tieflings strike that nerve that is the edgelord in all of us. You get to be the brooding anti-hero or really skirt along those villainous archetypes, especially when paired with the class that you choose. If you're choosing something like a necromancer or a rogue or a warlock, that really is an invitation to dive into being just a little bit or maybe extremely evil. I think that is part of the appeal.
They do lend themselves really well to certain classes that also have that edgelord appeal, and so you really get this kind of nice package of being able to combine a half-demon presence with a slightly edgier class. And what's really cool here is that there are so many people out there who really want to dive into a slightly gray area type of character, who isn't necessarily totally good and maybe isn't necessarily totally evil. And the Tiefling really lands right in that middle where it could swing either way.
I think the Tiefling is also a character option that built in has so much story. You can have the mystery of what your lineage is and your parentage is, which is a classic archetype and a very common port of call, that maybe your demonic parent or ancestor or granddaddy is perhaps even the villain of the campaign, and that gives you a direct link to what's going on in the campaign itself. Maybe you just want to find out where you come from as a character, and going along with those impulses is really rewarding from a storytelling perspective. You also get connected to the great cosmic conflicts of the Dungeons and Dragons universe, in that you do have that connection to the outer planes, to the abyss, to the nine hells, but also to the kind of conflicts that occur in the material worlds as well, if you're inhabiting a setting that perhaps draws inspiration from the Tiefling empires of Baal Tarath.
I think as we get into the mechanics of what the Tieflings offer, there's so many good options for classes to play as a Tiefling because of their special abilities and racial benefits. It just is a very well-rounded racial option.
I think it's worth mentioning that Tieflings just look cool. A lot of work has been done in the artwork of Tieflings to make them look like sexy badasses. That has an appeal all to its own. The armor design, the character design really pushes the edge and really feels like something non-standard, especially when you're choosing a miniature for your character.
And this is where we're going to come to our friends at Hero Forge, who give you a lot of great options to design and customize your own miniature to play a Tiefling character in Dungeons & Dragons. Tieflings are a very popular racial option, but you can't always find the right mini for the class that you want to play. And with the new variant options for Tiefling, you can really fit them into any class in the game. So being able to design and customize your own mini with Hero Forge is a great option.
Heading on over, you can use Hero Forge's online character builder to customize a half-demon character, choosing from all sorts of options like claws and hooves, different styles of horns and hairstyles. Even if you want to play a winged Tiefling, you can add that to the miniature as well. And regardless of which class you want to play with your character, Hero Forge is going to give you the options to really complete that and build that out.
Once you've created your perfect miniature in Hero Forge, you can order it to be printed and delivered right to you. It comes in a variety of different options for what material you would like to order it in. We recommend the premium plastic, and if you're picking up a premium plastic miniature from Hero Forge, make sure to use the discount code DungeonDudes at checkout to save $5 off your premium plastic miniature.
If that's not enough, Hero Forge is now launching their new Kickstarter for Hero Forge 2.0, which will now offer options for getting your miniature delivered to you in full color. Whether that's through their new innovative 3D printing technique, which prints the color into the miniature itself, or having it professionally hand-painted by the Hero Forge painters. This is a really awesome chance to get in at the ground level with Hero Forge's new offerings, so check them out on Kickstarter through to mid-February 2020, or head on right over to heroforge.com to pick up your latest and greatest miniature for your next player character.
And with that, let's talk about the different character traits that you get for playing a Tiefling.
Tieflings are very diverse in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition because the options for Tieflings go far beyond what is just in the player's handbook. Because in fact, we have variants for Tieflings that have been presented in both the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide and in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes.
Between all the variants that there are now to choose from for Tieflings, there's virtually an option for every class in the game. Each variant will come with a different set of spells and ability modifiers that you can use to really customize them to fit in anywhere, and all of them are pretty great.
So let's start off by taking a look at the baseline player's handbook Tiefling, and then we'll crack open Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes and the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide to see how we can modify this.
So right off the bat, Tieflings get a +2 to Charisma and a +1 to Intelligence, making them a great choice for any Charisma-based class.
As well, a good option for wizards or characters that have an interest in using their intelligence score. This does pretty specialize them into the mental ability scores. They don't have any physical stat boosts in the core Tiefling, which is why the variants are so interesting. Now, all Tieflings gain resistance to fire damage and dark vision as part of their infernal heritage, but they get a little bit more than that as well, in that all Tieflings do gain some spellcasting too.
All Tieflings from the player's handbook have the Thaumaturgy cantrip, and at 3rd level they gain Hellish Rebuke, and at 5th they gain Darkness. These spells can be very useful, and you get them just by picking this as a race.
Finally, all Tieflings are medium-sized creatures with a ground speed of 30 feet. You do know Common and Infernal innately for playing a Tiefling, and you've got the full suite of human-like customization options for what your character's appearance and age and weight and height are, although you do get a few differences because of your devilish heritage.
We should also note the variant options available for the Tiefling, starting with the options presented in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide, with things such as feral or winged Tieflings.
So the feral Tiefling changes out their ability score increases, and instead of gaining a bonus to intelligence and charisma, they instead gain a +2 bonus to their dexterity score and a +1 bonus to their intelligence score. If you choose the winged trait, you lose the Infernal Legacy trait from the Tiefling. So you don't gain the spellcasting from Thaumaturgy and Darkness, but you do instead gain a flying speed of 30 feet as long as you're not wearing heavy armor.
You'll want to make sure to talk to your DM before choosing to take any of these options in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide, especially the winged Tiefling option, because some DMs might not be happy with a player starting off with flying. Also in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide, there are other options such as Devil's Tongue, which allows you to replace the spells, giving you Vicious Mockery instead of Thaumaturgy as your cantrip. And then there is the Hellfire option, which gives you Burning Hands.
Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes also introduced variants on the Tiefling subraces as well. Each of these variants follow after one of the various 9 archdevils of the 9 hells. And both of them work similarly to the ones in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide, in that they may change the ability score increases you get as a Tiefling, but they also change the spells that you gain from the Infernal Legacy trait. What's important to know about this is that the Tiefling subraces in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes are incompatible with the options in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide. So if you choose a Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes option, you don't have the Infernal Legacy trait, so you can't get wings with these subraces.
The 2 options that stood out to us are the Zariel or the Dispater options for the Tiefling.
If you choose Dispater as your Infernal lineage, you gain a bonus to your Dexterity score instead of your Intelligence score, and your spellcasting gives you spells like Disguise Self.
If you choose the Zariel lineage, you get a bonus to your Strength instead, and you get the Branding Smite and Searing Smite options for spells.
So I think between the stock Tiefling and the other variants of the Tiefling, you've got a lot of choices here. If you've got the Zariel Tiefling, you've got a bonus to your Charisma and your Strength. Perfect for a Paladin. If you're choosing the Dispater Tiefling with the bonus to Dexterity and Charisma, pretty perfect for
A Swashbuckler rogue?
basically everything. Any of the spellcasters are going to want a bonus to their Dexterity more than they're going to want a bonus to their Intelligence if they're Charisma based.
I think we could go around this all day, but the idea here is that with Tieflings having the versatility in their options above what I would say any other racial option has, means that when we start talking about the classes that would work well with a Tiefling, you could pick any class and find a Tiefling that matches that option.
Choosing your Legacy with Levistus gives you a bonus to your Constitution score. Choosing Fernia gives you a bonus to your Wisdom score. So every single Tiefling subrace in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes basically means you can swap out the spells that you know, gain +2 to your Charisma, and then +1 to any other ability score of your choice. Of course, your ability score bonus then locks you into what spells you gain, but this is pretty flexible.
It's almost as flexible as playing a variant human. In my opinion, it is the second most flexible option for a racial choice that you can make in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition.
I would say it's pretty tied with the half-elf.
Fair enough. Half-elf is up there as well with its versatility. Still, because of these additions, it really makes Tiefling jump way up in the ranks for a great racial choice, no matter what you want to play.
Yeah, I think you can basically make anything work with a Tiefling, although a couple class options are truly iconic for Tieflings. So let's go into some of those favorites.
We'll start with the bread and butter of all Tiefling players, and that is the Tiefling Warlock option.
Yeah, I think if you're playing a Tiefling Warlock of Levistus, make the Infernal Pact with your fiendish ancestor. You got your bonus to Constitution, your bonus to Charisma. You got lots of great spell casting. It just completely sings.
And it really matches that sort of anti-hero vibe and edgelord for all of you people out there who are really looking to drive home how dark and sinister your character is.
Now, of course, as a warlock, you don't have to make a fiendish pact with your tiefling. You could choose one of the other pact options. Maybe your tiefling is interested in exploring other sources of power and is actually looking to change their legacy or change their stars. So you don't have to completely lean into the archetype by playing the Pact of the Fiend Warlock with your tiefling, but it is a lot of fun and it all lines up perfectly.
The Tiefling also lends themselves very well to the Sorcerer option. Just having the inherent magic within them, being born half demon, it makes sense that they are erupting with magical energies.
Yeah, if you really want to be a bit of a Mary Sue, you could also be a draconic lineage Tiefling sorcerer, and then you've got the infernal and draconic legacy in your bloodline. What a family tree has spawned you. I don't really want to contemplate too much, but I think that that's kind of the silly and fun appeal of playing tieflings, especially with sorcerers and warlocks, because you do get to have all of these other planar forces and supernatural creatures involved in your character's lineage, which is kind of cool and can actually yield some interesting plot devices.
If you wanted to play against type and really have a tiefling who is fighting against their ancestry as a demon, you could look at the Celestial Pact Warlock or the Divine Soul Sorcerer, or because of your bonus to Charisma and some of the variant options, a Paladin also works very well.
A tiefling is a fantastic character to explore the redemption arc with, because it really represents a character that has to overcome their nature and perhaps even the atrocities of their past in order to come to terms with who they are. And so playing a tiefling paladin or playing a tiefling divine soul does give you those connections to more celestial forces. At the same time, though, you could twist that around, because the divine soul doesn't necessarily need to be the divine soul of a benevolent deity. They could be the divine soul of Asmodeus himself. And so they could be embracing the power of the nine hells directly and embracing the divine powers that inhabit that realm. Maybe even they could be a divine soul of Tiamat. There's the draconic thing again. And with the paladin, you know, the Oath of Conquest and the Oath of Vengeance are not necessarily very nice oaths.
There's a lot of options in there that you could tie these back into your tiefling ancestry and heritage and really drive home the fact that you are fighting on behalf of a dark force that is vengeful towards some other entity out there. Still playing a good character, but you have a lot of little nuances that you can twist and turn around to make a really interesting character. And I think that's where the tiefling shines, is that with all of these options, your role-playing and character development options are endless.
Yeah, I really think you could draw a lot of amazing inspiration from characters like Hellboy or Spawn in creating how your tiefling interacts and moves through the world, particularly tieflings that have these supernatural powers like tiefling paladins, warlocks, or sorcerers, because you get that whole feeling of actually having the powers of hell at your command, but then you're twisting them for actually a benevolent purpose. You can explore that most deeply, I think, with the sorcerer, the warlock, and the paladin, but also to a lesser extent, say, with a tiefling wizard as well, which is a pretty good choice. Maybe not the best of the spellcaster options, but I think a tiefling wizard is quite iconic, particularly a tiefling necromancer.
When we look at all the classes, there's so many strange and unique options, but I've seen some great Tiefling bards, which is a rather unsettling sort of vibe that I get from a Tiefling bard, but it's a very good choice and works really well with what they offer.
A Tiefling bard is basically right out of a heavy metal album cover. I don't know about you, but I think playing a Tiefling bard is completely on point and is an opportunity to basically roll out your favorite classic rock, heavy metal, like blast that Led Zeppelin, blast that AC/DC, get in your highway to hell. Like, come on.
Model him after Dave Grohl's appearance in Tenacious D's Pick of Destiny film, and you have your Tiefling bard right there. Even when we look at rogues as another option, there are tieflings that fit in here, and they do seem like they could play a very good, sneaky, stealthy sort of character.
Oh yeah. The tiefling variants that give you the bonus to dexterity, particularly the ones that come with spells like Disguise Self or other illusion spells, would play perfectly as an arcane trickster or a swashbuckler. Really work quite well, I think.
There are other martial options that we might look at, such as the fighter, the barbarian, the ranger, and the monk, or other spellcasting options such as the cleric or the druid, all of which do have options in the variant rules that might lend themselves to them.
Yeah, I think you can play around with these. I think that as soon as you start backing away from the charisma-based spellcasting classes like the bard, the warlock, the sorcerer, and the paladin, as well as to a lesser extent the wizard, I think that that's when you're starting to get into the gray zone with the tiefling, where you're now exploring things that play against type, right? You are now looking at not the iconic stereotypical tieflings, but really out into your own territory. The good thing about this is that because you can mix and match the ability score increases, you can always find something that makes your character work. Your tiefling will always be a bit of a charmer, though. Your character will always have that charisma bonus. So I would be really careful about playing against the type and then trying to completely ignore your character's +2 bonus to charisma. Because I've seen players that are like, oh, I'm going to play a tiefling monk, and I'm just going to leave my charisma score at the lowest and not worry about that +2 bonus. But I think you're kind of cutting out an element of your character entirely there.
If you want to make best use of the bonuses you're getting, looking for something that does use your charisma is very important.
I will say, though, the idea of a winged feral tiefling monk, ranger, or fighter, or even barbarian, all sound pretty good just on the strength of the flight alone. Because we can't discount that as a possibility that all of those classes can really gain a lot from something that can fly, especially because they're all classes that don't necessarily need to wear heavy armor, because they can all be played as dexterity-based or archer-based characters.
The other thing to keep in mind is if you're not taking the wings, even giving these martial classes a few little spells to just enhance their fighting prowess is not a bad choice either.
Yeah, I think that all of them will be good and satisfying options. I don't think that there's as much resonance with the martial classes as there are with the other spellcasting classes, but I think that for a character role-playing point of view, choosing those martial classes, I think, represents a tiefling character that is really trying to walk away from their past. Someone that is really trying to ignore it and not embrace that. And that can be a really great role-playing angle to explore for your character.
At the end of the day, tieflings are very rich in their character abilities and their role-playing options. There's so many different ways to go with a tiefling, and there's so many places to draw inspiration from and come up with a really unique and interesting character backstory that's going to allow you to really feel like part of the D&D universe and playing a character that has a fiendish lineage.
Of course, this also does mean that when you are choosing to play a tiefling character, it is really important to have a conversation with your dungeon master about what to expect for that character. Tieflings in some Dungeons & Dragons settings are going to be driven out of town with torches and pitchforks. And in other Dungeons & Dragons settings, in cosmopolitan places like Waterdeep or Sharn, people might not really bat an eye at seeing a tiefling. So knowing what the stakes are going to be for your character can be quite important and something worthwhile discussing with your dungeon master. For what it's worth, for me, I enjoy the idea that tieflings have a mix of demonic and infernal heritages. I don't really distinguish too much between those in my own game settings, and I like to meld them together. And I like the idea that the common folk of these worlds see tieflings with a little bit of fear, the same level of fear that you would experience when you were in the presence of a powerful noble or another wizard, recognizing that this is somebody marked with power and lineage in some way.
So this has been a look at playing Tieflings in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. If you've made an awesome Tiefling character, tell us about it in the comments below.
And of course, if you're enjoying our show, please consider supporting our work on Patreon. You can find out how by following the links in the description below.
Don't forget to check out our live play Shadows of Drakkenheim, which airs Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern on Twitch. You can find all the previous episodes from this season and last season right up over here.
And we have plenty more videos on the myriad races that inhabit the worlds of Dungeons & Dragons right up over here.
Please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time
in the dungeon.